Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. I will tell you one of the first questions that I was asked when I walked in the hall today was, do you miss being around here? And Senator Martini, Senator Smith, I said that I miss the people, but not necessarily the process. But you know, but I will tell you this, that I certainly have strong appreciation for all of the work that you all do, having been in those seats for 24 years of my public service. And I certainly believe, Madam Chair, that it was a great season of my life, and hopefully for the citizens that I served. Today I am here on Senate Bill.
Madam Mayor, we have an amendment.
Okay.
But it's very technical.
Yes.
So you're going to print them, or you want me to just do it in theory and you pass it out because it's just one word? Okay. So it is, guys, it's Amendment 567, and on page 1, line 6, between amended, is to read reenacted.
It's correcting the enacted law.
Right.
So to read amended.
So, okay, so is there any objection to that technical amendment? Hearing none, the bill is in its correct form. Okay, welcome to the committee, Madam Mayor and Ms. Pearson.
Thank you so much. As I said, I'm here on Senate Bill 63, and Senate Bill 63 authorizes all qualified electors residing within certain parishes to vote for the incorporation of an unincorporated area. I will tell you that the issue, Madam Chair and members, that I'm here to discuss today is undoubtedly one of the single most issues of importance that I believe our community will face. I want to begin by making one thing extremely clear, and that is this bill serves only one purpose, and that is to expand the vote on incorporating the proposed City of St. George to all the residents of this parish and allow everyone to weigh in on a decision that will absolutely affect them. The measure would still be on the ballot in October. The voter base would simply be expanded to allow residents in the parish to vote. This is about the people residing outside of the proposed city limits of St. George, who under current law will not get to vote, but who are indeed adversely and financially affected. This would give them the right to vote on this important issue. My administration released a study yesterday or day before, which outlined the effects of the incorporation of the proposed St. George City. The study showed the numbers and the impact on the operating budget and how that might impact the residents outside the city of St. George who are not allowed to vote on this issue. The analysis showed the budget, and as a result, the services would need to be cut about $48 million annually. Now, what that means is that every city, parish, department, and agency would need to be cut by a minimum of 18% across the board. If we protect public safety from the cuts, or our police and firefighters, the budgets for all city, parish, departments, and agencies would need to be reduced by a minimum of 45%. Some people have argued about the timing of this legislation. But I say that you have to get things right at any time. You make it right as soon as you can. I will say this. I've been contemplating a lot lately on the expression, a house divided. As you know, the expression has biblical origin, in that it was Jesus who said in Matthew 12:25, every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. The expression was also used in one of Abraham Lincoln's famous speeches before he became the 16th president. He used it to contrast the two halves of the United States at that time. Today, I say to you that the future is bright for Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish. This week, e-commerce giant eBay planted its roots right here in Baton Rouge. Last year, our administration, with the assistance of citizens, community leaders on both sides of the aisle, Republicans, Democrats, independents, businesses, all united to pass the largest transportation and infrastructure initiative in the history of Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish. Part of that infrastructure project includes 25% of projects going to the proposed St. George area and 27% of the dollars, or $276 million, going to the proposed area. I believe that we all need to be pulling in the same direction. Us versus them is not what America is all about, and it's not what Baton Rouge is all about. We are one for all and all for one. I wholeheartedly support Senator Colomb's bill. I believe that everyone in this parish should be allowed to vote on a decision that will impact all of the citizens in this community. This bill merely says that the people should be allowed to vote. I think so, all of them.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning, Ms. Pearson.
Madam Chairman, I'm familiar with how to offer evidence in a courtroom, but not so much in here. But I have an exhibit. It's just one exhibit, and it's actually the fiscal note that we sent back to the legislative auditor, I think.
Fiscal Office, a legislative auditor?
Fiscal officer, the fiscal office, and it also had an attachment. It has the study that was released yesterday to the public, and I'd like to
Submit that study?
submit
Of course.
that as part of the record. I have one for everybody, and I
Okay.
have some more in case anybody likes to read. My name is Mary Olive Pearson. I've been around for quite a while. In fact, this is my 75th year on this planet, which is pretty good. And I have spent all 75 of those years in East Baton Rouge Parish. When I was born, I lived in a place that they now call the Garden District. It was called Roseland Terrace then, and then I grew up on Highland Road, south of LSU. I went to LSU, I went to LSU Law School. I know about Baton Rouge, and I really like Baton Rouge, and I've done everything I can in my professional career to assist our previous mayor and our current mayor. And for your information, I think it's important to know I am an unpaid representative. I'm not making money off of this. I'm in this because I think it's a good project, and I want to keep our city together. I think of Baton Rouge as being formed in its consolidated form. We were formed in 1949. That's how long we've been a consolidated form of government. I know that we have these little, I call them small, sleepy communities. Freudian slip. Sleepy communities. Actually, Zachary was formed before 1900. And then Baker, which is a sleepy little village, it's now a city, and then Central, which is also in the northern part of our parish with, I think, less than 10,000 residents. This proposal includes over 80,000 residents who would be living there. And I would like for you to understand the growth of Baton Rouge as I have witnessed it. If you had overlay maps and you started with the first map of Baton Rouge where they planted the red stick on the river and we got our name, it was very small. It was adjacent to the river, which is our western boundary. And we grew out from there. And in the 50s, the interstate came along. And when the interstate crossed the Mississippi River, that's Interstate 10, crossed the Mississippi River, it went southeast toward New Orleans. That's the way we grew. That's That's where the commerce went. That's where the people went. And then 12 is simply broke off from 10 to connect Baton Rouge to Hammond and back to 10 when it got down on the east bank of New Orleans. So that's why the southeast part of the parish has gotten so much attention. That's where huge shopping centers are. That's why we now have a lot of attention being paid to sort of the left behind areas of North Baton Rouge. When I was a kid, my uncle, he always worked for the plant. Well, the plant is now Exxon. I mean, then it was Esso, and now it's Exxon. So Standard Oil. Everybody lived in North Baton Rouge. I mean, the Struma was a big high school. So that's how we ended up in this southeast part of the parish, which is really, and this is not a criticism of what we left behind. We haven't left everything else behind, but it's vibrant. We have spent a lot of money out there. The infrastructure is incredible. Now, I know somebody will say we got bad traffic problems. Mayor, you got to do something about that.
I am.
Okay. We got traffic problems. There's traffic problems in Chicago. I mean, let's get over it. But that is where the commerce is. And that's where we've spent all of our dollars. And now they want to own it and take it away and then, take money away from downtown Baton Rouge. I need to tell you this so that you'll understand. Baton Rouge has 3 wards. Ward 1, 2, and 3. Ward 1 is the city of Baton Rouge. That's downtown and around the river and goes out past, I think, LSU. Then Ward 3 is out in the southeast part of the parish, which is where we moved gradually because of the interstate development. And then Ward 2 is up in the north part of the parish. That's where Central is in Ward 2. So when you understand that geography and you understand we've collected taxes, parish-wide taxes, for our consolidated government, and they're spent where they need to be spent. We're having a unified approach to our parish, which I would like to see survive. Now, this document that I've handed out to you is the study that was released yesterday. There's really nothing new in that study. Somebody will say, well, you come up with these new numbers. They're really not new. We had a study done 2 years ago by some professors from LSU and some other experts in economics. It's the same numbers. It's going to impact. But the point I want to make is, if you double and duplicate the services into 2 governments, 2 city councils, 2 mayors, 2 police chiefs, 2 everythings, it's like a couple getting a divorce. I used to do divorces, and they would tell me, how much is this going to cost? I said, well, let me tell you what. You're paying for 1 house note now? You're getting ready to pay a house note and an apartment rent. Okay? So your expenses are going to double because your services are going to double. You're going to be running 2 operations. The other point is this. When you separate St. George from the rest of the parish, and then tell the rest of the parish, oh, you can't vote. Well, let me tell you where that came from. That's been in the law. I went back as far as I could, as long as I could figure it out. In most of these parishes, the reason for that is that they're not consolidated. There's a lot of litigation with a town called Ball. I don't know if any of you all represent the town of Ball. Huh? The town of Ball survives on tickets, I guess. But the town of Ball has been in a lot of litigation. But the reason for allowing only the people that live in the area to vote is because their finances are not involved with anybody else in the parish. I'm not even quite sure what parish Ball is in. It might be in Rapides. But anyway, we are consolidated. We've been sharing all of these years. And what I'm trying to figure, I tried to figure out an analogy to this, and I thought about, it's like baking a cake. When you, in 1949, you get all of the ingredients and you lay them out. You got the flour and the butter and the shortening and the sugar and the this and the that. Okay, if you want to divide it up then or keep it divided or whatever. But when you put it all together and you make a cake 50 years later, how are you going to break that cake down? It's going to impact the whole cake. So that's the only analogy I could come up with. Maybe it's not a good one. But I have one other point I want to make. I am a lawyer. Of the 75 years, I've been a lawyer for 49, which makes me like elderly. I get mad when they say an elderly woman got robbed and they say she was 71. I'm going, could be me. But anyway, I'm going to give you the legal argument for it. And it's the reason for this that I gave you the study. It's called equal protection and it's called due process. It's in the Louisiana Constitution and it's in the United States Constitution. And whenever you do something that affects someone, they have a right to vote on that. If you'll remember, the tea that was thrown into the Boston Harbor was about taxation without representation. So what's happening here is, if the people that are not in the proposed city don't get to vote, they are being denied their right to have a say-so in how their money is going to be spent. Because when that $48 million goes out the window, it's got to come from somewhere, and it's going to have to come from them. And right now, we're sharing that. So this matter today, and I'm trying to be delicate about this, that issue is a legal issue that will be won in the courts. I don't know a court in Baton Rouge, either federal or state, that will say this does not violate the constitutional rights of the people that are not allowed to vote on it and who are adversely affected by it. That said, it would be wise to set up the election, which has been called now for October the 12th.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Set up that election now to allow all these people to vote instead of pay for the election, have a big election, and only let those people out there vote. Then there's a lawsuit. I will be involved. I'm not going to lie to you. I will be involved in that lawsuit. And then you get a lawsuit that comes along and it throws out the election. So then later you have it again and you pay for it again. So I would say that, for efficiency's sake, if nothing else, you set the election up so that it is constitutional at this juncture and go forward. And I want to repeat one last thing. I heard that what we're saying is fear mongering. I'm not trying to scare anybody. Those numbers are not there to scare anybody. Those numbers they've been around for 2 or 3 years. Like I said, they're just a confirmation of an earlier report. And they've also been confirmed by the people in St. George. They put out numbers and said, this is what we're going to do to the city. They know it. We are not here, as they will tell you, some people will tell you, we're trying to kill the movement. No. And they keep saying they want to have an election. So do we. We just want to make sure that everybody gets to participate that ought to be participating. And then, if they add the voters that are not in the area to the rolls, they can get more votes. So, with that said, I support Senator Colomb's bill.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pearson. And Madam Mayor, we have a question, and I don't know which one of you it's for. Senator Martini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Ms. Pearson, I've been practicing law too, not quite as long as you.
Younger.
But I do know that Senator Lario was the only person that was there for the Boston Tea Party. Other than that,
he's not here to defend himself.
Right.
So
well, he's probably listening. He'll probably take my parking spot in a minute. I'm just curious on the legal issue. As I appreciate the bill, although it is a general subject matter bill, obviously Senator Colomb knows how to use the number of voters by parish to make it it really is a local bill. Mm-hmm. But as I appreciate it, that this law has been on the books for a long time, and as far as incorporating or annexing property, that the procedure, I know from experience in my district, the city of Harahan annexed some property that didn't even abut property in Harahan. So when we asked, well, who opposed this, they said, well, nobody voted on it because none of the people that were affected were ever resided within the city of Harahan. So my question is, why do you think I'm assuming you're suggesting that it would be unconstitutional to just allow the residents of the St. George area to vote as opposed to the parish? And if so, have there been any legal challenges? Because it would seem to me that this has been the law for a long time. How do they vote on? Did Central, when Central incorporated, did they all vote, or did the whole parish vote? I don't know. That's my question. Is I'm really interested in why you think it would be subject to challenge and being overturned.
When Central was incorporated into a city, that was around the year 2005, we had Mayor Bobby Simpson was the mayor at that time. And actually, if you go back and look at what went on in Central, nobody objected to it. I mean, it was kind of like everybody rolled over and played dead. They even let the Central people withdraw and form their own city, and they didn't assume any of the legacy costs with regard to retirement funds, and they didn't pay for anything because everybody wanted Central. Everybody south of Central, north of Central, it was like a big kumbaya, and we're just going to let the Central. They've been calling themselves Central for quite a while.
Sure. We have the same thing in Metairie, but it's not incorporated.
It's not incorporated.
Right.
So that went down without objection. Nobody challenged it. Well, it was challenged, but wholeheartedly. In fact, one of the lawsuits that was filed to declare the incorporation unconstitutional, declare part of that statute unconstitutional, they didn't even sue the Attorney General. You're required to sue the Attorney General if you want something declared unconstitutional, for those of you who are not lawyers. They didn't sue the Attorney General, and he waived his right to be a participant. So they had him on their side. So it's a different thing, but it hasn't been challenged in the past in this way, and nobody has ever challenged who gets to vote on it.
And I understand what you're basically saying is that, and I'm not familiar with the details, but you're basically saying East Baton Rouge has contributed a lot of money to the development of this area. Correct. And because of that, you should have some say so in its future. But and I don't know how the taxes work via municipality versus parish, but it would still be within the parish of East Baton Rouge. Is that not correct?
It would be in the parish of East Baton Rouge. Okay. But
what do you lose there? I know you talk about the duplication of services. You would lose directly $48 million in what, tax revenues? Is that it?
Sales tax
revenues.
Property tax revenues. And look, when they tried to do this 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago,
it seems like St. George has been doing something in this building for the last 10 years.
They had a petition 3 or 4 years ago, and they didn't get enough signatures, so it never got past that. But there were some amendments to the statute, I have to say. After that, they changed the process, because during that time, prior to 2016, when you were collecting signatures, you could collect them for 10 years. Okay, well, they changed all that. Time limit. 9 months now. But there were a lot of changes made. I actually wanted to get this change put in there at that time. But I was told, well, nobody's going to vote for it. Well, okay. Today, we have to face that issue. And when I'm asked, well, if it was constitutional then, I'm not saying any of the past things were constitutional, but we changed the Constitution.
But there's no jurisprudence that says that you have an absolute the outside of the area has the right to vote on it.
And I'm not sure that anybody outside of Central, let's take Central for example, I'm not sure that they had an impact on the rest of the parish. In fact, I had a conversation with our finance department yesterday. I said, what was the negative impact when Central came? They said it was actually neutral.
It was neutral.
It was neutral.
Well, I would imagine there are circumstances where just a group of people in a particular area want to incorporate to try to raise some tax revenue to try to improve the amenities that come. So.
Senator, I wanted to add something. Certainly, Attorney Pearson is the legal expert in this since I am not an attorney, but I will say this, that I don't think at any time in history do we lose by allowing the citizens to exercise their right to vote.
Yeah, I understand that. My question is,
And that's what this bill is basically
no,
saying.
I understand, and we a lot of times that's the way we get around voting for things. We say, "Oh, it's constitutional amendment, so we let the people vote." I understand that. My only point is, it would occur to me that if you truly believe that it would be unconstitutional to not let the other residents of East Baton Rouge vote, why would you not seek some type of a declaratory judgment or injunctive relief against the election and get a ruling?
Well, here's my answer. It's not too late. And I was hoping to solve my problem in the legislature.
Okay.
Because if we solve it in the legislature, we don't have to go down to the courthouse and spend years.
But the only thing is, it seems like we're doing it. I mean, the way that what we're doing here is contrary to the way it has been done in the past, as to the rest of the state. And
nobody has said that is right or wrong. It hasn't been challenged.
And it's not until somebody rules on it. And rather than going through all of this, I would suggest. And I'm surely not going to tell you how to practice law.
I have a draft of that lawsuit in my office.
Really?
Yeah.
So I had dinner last night with one of your former clients who bragged on you, so who's a member of this legislature. So we'll kind of bald-headed guy from Shreveport, you know.
Oh yeah. A kind of a funny guy.
Yeah. Anyway, no, look, I respect your legal opinion. I'm just saying, it just seems like we're doing a whole lot. We're dragging the legislature through this thing, where the simple thing would be this: if you truly believe that, and I'm not saying you don't, if you truly believe that it would be unconstitutional only to allow the citizens of St. George to vote. To me, that would be something that would
You're absolutely correct.
So, anyway,
and we've thought
that's
about
all.
that.
You know,
I
understand I understand both processes. I'm just suggesting. Thank you.
Hey, any other questions, Senator Mills?
It was horrible. I guess a couple of issues, as I'm kind of hearing it, not being from here, but in Senate Finance a few years back, when I was on Senate Finance, there was a huge debate on this issue. And it seemed that nobody could answer the question of the bond indebtedness and the long-term bond indebtedness if this annexation or this took place. And it seemed like when we had the school boards there and we had everybody there, it seemed like a major thing to unravel from the long-term bond obligations. Has there been a study on that?
I do have one of my bond attorneys here who can speak to.
Could help me on that, because it seemed like from not understand, I was more into the financial piece, and I was in parish government for a long time, and it seems like when you have those millage elections and it's either school board elections or major improvements in the parish, how would that be affected by?
Good morning. My name is Adam Parker. I'm an attorney at Butler Snow. Our attorneys have worked on the bonds and elections for many years, and if you impair the bonds that are outstanding with the existing tax that's levied pursuant to an election, yes, you can get challenged in court. There's a multi-part constitutional test that the city parish would have to overcome, and also the folks that are seeking incorporation. I will tell you that the 2% sales tax does not encumber as much debt as there's basically two series of bonds.
Excuse Senator Donahue in the chair.
So there are two series of bonds that are outstanding for the sales tax, and there's a general pledge of revenues pursuant to another issue. But the 2% tax is not as encumbered as there are three separate half-cent taxes that are levied parish-wide, and those are significantly encumbered. And I can tell you that as of the last audit, I'll give you the right number here. I don't want to give. I've got a guesstimate here, or the actual number. I'm sorry. Let me get it. So it's about $127 million that was encumbered under the green light tax, which actually, I'm sorry, it's more than that. The green light tax, as of 2017, $220 million outstanding, 163 senior, 56 million subordinate, and that's a half-cent sales tax. You also have a sewerage tax, which is a half-cent, and get my exact number. Sorry, I got my pages all mixed up here.
No problem. And
But the sewage tax and those both have significant amounts of debt that are outstanding. Yes.
it seemed to me from hearing the testimony way back, it looked like no one on either side had a solution for all of the indebtedness, the bond ratings, what would happen. It just seems to me that this issue is a lot more complex from the debt that is basically the obligation of what was voted on in totality than. Am I right on that?
No, absolutely. So the road tax, the sewage tax, heavily encumbered. If you were to take out 20% of the parish population and the sales tax that was associated with that, and then say, okay, well, it would affect the coverage tests that were built into the bond documents. It would get challenged by the bondholders.
Wow. And okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Peterson.
So thank you. Your name again? I apologize.
Adam Parker.
Adam, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
And thank you for being here, Mayor. I certainly understand your concerns, and Ms. Pearson. It just what you just mentioned, Adam, the 20% impact on the fisc, the city's fisc, city parish fisc. That's significant, and that was the issue that was there years ago. And what you're saying to me, it has not been resolved. There's not been a way to resolve that at this point. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so let me just move. Let's say that the citizens, and let's use the current law, that the citizens of the residents of St. George's were the only voters that were permitted to vote on this, and they opted to vote to incorporate, and they pull out. We now have a 20% impact on the city's fisc. And next year, this same committee receives a bill, let's say by Senator Clater or Senator White or Senator Barrow, for other areas of East Baton Rouge Parish to do the exact same thing, right? And that they decide that only the voters in their respective community would be Scotlandville or other communities would be able to pull out. What does that do to the city's fisc? When does it end?
I don't know that there's a lot. I mean, we can incorporate the city of Senator Peterson and Adam Parker, right?
Now, that would be great.
I mean,
Well,
we
you
have
like
a really
that's
nice,
for another
yeah.
day, and we can do that together. It can be a Peterson Parker community. It'd be great.
And certainly, and so what really matters is what did the law look like at the time of the underlying, revenue stream that's going to pay the debt in these bonds,
Right.
Right. So for the 2% general tax, it's very explicit that the tax cannot be levied by the parish in an incorporated portion of the parish, right? So the bondholders at the time for the sales tax bonds, just the 2013A and 14A, those bonds, the folks that purchased those bonds knew at that time, hey, unincorporated area, and you can get to a point where it's so impaired that you might, bar an incorporation, as a legislative body, as a state, but
Yeah,
those are a little different than the others where the parish is actually levying it already. The parish levies a half-cent sales, two half-cent sales tax, and there's a district that also levies a half-cent sales tax, which is the Move BR plan. It's a capital improvement district authorized by statute, levied parish-wide. Basically what you would be doing, and we'll talk about this with the next bill, but if you take out a large portion of that population and then say that newly incorporated city they're not party to those previously existing agreements, right? So if the city of Senator Peterson and Adam, we wouldn't be a party to it, so we wouldn't be on the hook to the bondholders, right? Because the party that issued the debt was the parish, the city parish.
Right. And let me just ask you, I think I know the answer to this because I've been in these conversations with my mom, who is 74 years old, and she is trying to make safe investments. And I just want to jump to that because when people invest in municipal bonds, those are supposed to be some of the safest bonds. And I'm encouraging her to put it in places where there's known risk and it's minimal as compared to other places. So for her survival, tell me about those bondholders and what the impact would be on those.
If you remove 20%,
The profile of a municipal, those that are
well, particularly,
typically
the city parish of Baton Rouge is one of the highest rated in the state. And
Right now?
Yes, and very stable finances, it would be significant on, and I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't say here's exactly, how this is going to, but I would say generally as somebody that's looking to invest, that would be a significant impact on,
So you're undermining the
creditworthy.
city parish's fisc. You are pulling for potentially $48 million based on at least this study. I mean, I guess that's people can argue about what that actual number is, but I don't think anybody disagrees that it's a negative impact and it pulls resources out. And so you're not going to be able to service the debt of the city moving forward at the same way you have been in the past, right? The last question I'd like to ask, and maybe Madam Mayor, you can talk about this, or if there's somebody else, with respect to the schools. I understand that the committee members have received information about students who attend schools outside of the potential boundaries of this municipality. And so those that wanted to continue outside of those boundaries, and I understand it's thousands, how would that work if the parish the school districts don't agree to continue to have those students in their schools?
Senator, I can't speak to all the mechanics of that, but I will tell you that has, as you well know, even when I was here, that has been a concern in terms of the execution of our schools, and how that would all transfer, especially not only into the choice of and ability of students to go to desired schools, but also the fiscal impact of legacy costs, et cetera, that would be involved in that.
Yeah. And finally, just coming from New Orleans, over the last decade, we found ourselves consolidating. My father served as a tax assessor. There were 7 tax assessors for the city of New Orleans. That was crazy. Glad that he served. But at some point, we consolidated all those and decided to create some efficiencies in government. This, to many people who I believe are on the other side of this bill, it's interesting that we often hear about fiscal conservatism. I thought that in the definition inherently was that you would create efficiencies in government and not have duplication. So when, to your point, Ms. Pearson, about doubling every position in government and creating a new city within, there hasn't been, and I'm looking forward to the opposition to hearing from them, how in fact are you creating efficiencies? It seems to me that you're not pleased with a lot of things that are going on in your community, and then in a democratic society, you have a way of weighing in on that through voting. But the answer is not to run, take your ball and run. The answer is to get involved and to change and to make the change that you want to progress, and not continue to create efficiencies. And I see faces that are looking perplexed. And so when you come to the table, feel free to explain to me why it makes sense to duplicate all of these municipal government expenditures. Why does it make sense to do that at this time in 2019, when we are struggling for infrastructure, primarily for infrastructure needs all across this state? And I suspect that you're doing that. And I understand just recently you passed an initiative to be able to invest more in Baton Rouge, including the citizens of the St. George community. So thank you for being here. I'm glad you're offering the bill, and I look forward to supporting Senator Colomb and you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other questions to the ladies at the table and the gentleman? Okay, we will hear from the opposition. And while they're coming to the table, I'll read in the cards. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, not opposition. We have some other people that wanted to speak. I'm sorry, opposition. We just so you know, we always take the proponents first and then the opponents second. So we're not doing anything different. We do have Logan Anderson in support. Ms. Pearson's already spoke. Emmy Cormier that wants to speak. Angel Bradford, Caitlin Bradford, Nancy Curry, and Susan Nelson that wants to speak. I'm going to ask the speakers not to be repetitive and not to repeat what they've already repeated in the essence of time. So I'll give each person just a small amount of time to speak so that we can give the opposition a fair hearing as well. And state your name for the record.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Logan Anderson. I represent the Baton Rouge Area Chamber. We are a business association and economic development organization that represents the 9-parish greater Baton Rouge and metropolitan area. So I come asking you to support Senator Colomb's SB 63, adding our voice to the chorus to allow all of East Baton Rouge residents to vote on something that profoundly impacts all of East Baton Rouge. The proposed incorporation of St. George is not that of an autonomous, largely self-contained area that just wishes to formalize itself as an independent entity. This is an area that's inextricably linked geographically, socially, and economically to the city of Baton Rouge and to the parish of East Baton Rouge. So make no mistake, this is not just incorporation, this is a separation. And based on that principle, we believe that all those affected should be able to weigh in on the issue. And outside of that principle, and our role as the voice of the region's business community and the region's lead economic developer, we do have some pragmatic concerns about the impact of the incorporation. First is, as the city parish covered, there's every indication that this incorporation would significantly impact the city parish's ability to provide some basic services. I think anywhere between 18 to 45% across departments. At the same time, our best analysis, looking at the proposed St. George budget versus other communities across the country who've done similar things, suggests that the newly incorporated city would also have to raise taxes, potentially significantly, to Senator Peterson's point, to provide duplicate services and agencies independent of the city parish. That's especially true given that the current proposal doesn't provide a mechanism to fully fund a St. George school district, which is the primary and express purpose of the new city. All of this ultimately means more taxes on business, yet another element of instability in our business climate, and a further hit to our economic competitiveness. The issue of St. George, as you'll hear today, is an extremely complicated and divisive one. East Baton Rouge has some serious challenges to address, not least within its school system. But as an organization, our board and our members, we don't believe that the separation and the creation of a new city is the way to address those challenges, and that if one were to be created, at least all those impacted should have the opportunity to have a voice in that decision. So I thank you again for my time today.
No, thank you, Mr. Anderson, for those comments from the Chamber of Commerce. And sometimes I fight with them, and it's good to be on the same side
Yes,
today.
ma'am.
So welcome to the committee. Ma'am,
Yeah.
tell us your
Bradford.
name.
Angel Bradford is my name.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Also, I wanted to make one quick correction because my twin sister's here, and her last name's Joshua now. I forgot she's married. So it's Caitlin Joshua, not Caitlin Bradford.
Okay.
Okay, so we grew up in Baton Rouge in the proposed St. George area, went to Woodlawn, the whole 9 yards. So I'm here for myself, obviously, as a voter in the area, but also for my parents because they're at work, but very concerned about this issue. I wanted to highlight that I have reached out to those that support St. George movement, like the leaders of it. And a lot of the feedback I get is around this idea of the goalpost being moved if the vote becomes parish-wide. But my response to that is very much so that a lot of people in the St. George area, or proposed area rather, we haven't been engaged in the work that's been being done by this small fringe group, if you will. Let alone the parish hasn't been engaged in how they'll be impacted. So my response to that, of course, is what about the goalposts that were established for EBR residents? Did the rest of EBR residents know what the impacts would be? Another concern of mine, I just wanted to highlight, of course, what's been said before was the impact could be anywhere from $29 to $53 million per the latest, well, not the latest, the older assessments by the LSU economist. And so that would be devastating, and I'm just asking that we protect the democratic process for the entire parish and consider that everyone has contributed in shared resources. We've made decisions collectively for the parish before. This should be no different, and this should set the precedents for future discussions around further incorporations, so that we don't have to revisit this issue every time. And I wanted to also have like an honest moment of, let's be real, if you're afraid that a parish-wide vote is going to negatively impact your movement, then maybe you shouldn't have this movement. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Bradford.
Good morning. I'm Emmy
Good morning.
Cormier with One Baton Rouge. I'm a lifelong.
Morning.
Good morning. I'm a lifelong Louisianian. I'm a lifelong Baton Rougian. I am a proud product of public schools, and I'm an even prouder public school parent. I've been a registered voter all my adult life. I have never missed a ballot, but I'm currently precluded from voting on one of the most important issues to happen to Baton Rouge in my lifetime, because I live 2 blocks from the proposed city of St. George. 2 blocks separates my ability to decide my own fate. 2 blocks bar me from voting. This is not just about St. George. This is far greater than that. Who gets to control what happens to them? Arbitrary, capricious, fictitious, imaginary lines do not a city make. 2 blocks shouldn't define who gets to vote, because it certainly doesn't define who is affected. I am affected. My children, my neighbors, this entire parish is affected. And we deserve a vote. At the bare minimum, we deserve the opportunity to vote on this life-altering issue. Extra layers of government, different groups exhausting their efforts and resources while not able to serve their constituents is not how or where improvement happens. The best and sometimes only option to get out of poverty is education. The proposed city of St. George will destroy what is left of the East Baton Rouge Parish school system, a fact they do not deny. Each and every member of this parish will be affected by the proposed city of St. George, and each and every citizen of this parish deserves to be heard at the ballot box. Something that hasn't yet been discussed today, state law requires when a new school district is proposed that the entire state gets to vote on that new school district, as well as the parish, of course, as was the case with Central. Why wouldn't we already have this proposal in harmony with state law that the entire parish gets to vote on whether or not an area becomes incorporated? So in the same vein, the existing parish, who stand to pay at least twice as much in property taxes, deserves a vote right here, right now, on whether this city should exist. The proposed city of St. George is almost 100,000 people. That's 1/3 of the parish. The other 2/3 deserve a vote. And right now, they have none. Voter suppression is a large problem nationwide. This committee today has the opportunity and the power to expand voting rights to the entire parish by supporting Senator Colomb's bill. They want to vote? Well, so do I. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cormier. Senator Martini has a question. Will you guys come back to the table? Senator Martini?
Yes, thank
And then
you,
Ms.
Madam
Senator
Chair.
Mills.
Ms. Cormier, let me ask you this. What if I live 2 blocks outside of the Baton Rouge city limits or parish limits, but closer to St. George than most of the people who live inside?
Yes, sir.
Should I have a vote?
Absolutely.
Even if I don't live in the parish?
Oh, I thought you said inside the parish.
No, you said you're 2
Pardon me.
blocks outside of St. George. I understand what you want, but what I'm saying is, when you consider, and I heard the gentleman from the chamber talk about did you say 9 parishes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, why shouldn't all 9 parishes get the vote?
So,
And I guess maybe my question. And you can go ahead. Oh, I understand that, but you know we're trying to be one Louisiana too. And I don't quite understand that if we pass this law, it will say that as far as incorporations go, it's only the people who live in the area that is being incorporated, except in the city of Baton Rouge. And I'm trying to, I guess my question really should be to, I guess, Senator Colomb, why do we make this, why do we try to make this a local bill? Why don't we just, if the argument stands, and as Ms. Pearson said, you know, if that's the way that it should be, then why shouldn't it apply to everybody in the state as opposed to just the parish of East Baton Rouge? And you
I'm
can
not
answer
the
the
author
question.
of
You
this
can answer
bill,
the
so-
question. You can answer the question of
Couple of
me
those.
living 2 blocks outside of Baton Rouge, and then I guess my question is really to the chair or to the proponents or to the lady raising her hand back there.
well, I can say that we are under a consolidated form of government in the parish. So as far as parish-wide votes, that's a distinction that is made financially and geographically.
Mm-hmm.
This incorporated versus unincorporated is none of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're asking for is the opportunity to be able to vote on the direct effect of the direct parish.
I
and the
understand
direct money.
completely what you're asking for. I'm not. All I'm saying is that like I live in Jefferson Parish. When you drive out of here and you get into Jefferson Parish, you make a left, and that's where I'm. Now there are a lot of people in my, my kids live in New Orleans, but there's a lot of people in Jefferson Parish that live a lot closer to New Orleans than they do to where I live in Kenner. But so I mean.
So, well, state law right now is designed actually where the whole state gets to vote on a school district. The whole
I understand.
state.
Yeah, I'm talking about this law, though. This
Right.
law,
So what I'm proposing is at least getting to the level of enlarging the voter pool, enlarging the opportunity to discuss your own finances within your own.
I mean, I think we all agree that those people that are affected ought to have some say so.
Yes.
But that's not what the law says, and that's not what your argument is. You live 2 blocks outside of St. George. That affects you.
Yes.
Okay. But if I live 1 block outside of Baton Rouge, but closer to St. George, then a lot of people who are going to get to vote on it, should I have a vote? I mean, if I outside the parish, should I have a vote too?
Well, this committee has the opportunity to expand both what you would like and what we're asking for today.
Okay, I got you. I got you.
Okay, Senator Mills for a question.
And it kind of, thank you, Madam Chair. It kind of expands on what Senator Peterson was talking, but I had several people contact me that would be in the proposed district, and they're extremely worried, and I'm not sure if this is the panel to answer the question, but maybe it can be on the table for anybody to answer. But they have gifted children that are attending school out of the area, and I think the information that was handed to me from the East Baton Rouge school system says that there's nearly 2,000 students in the proposed city of St. George who attend either gifted or magnet schools, and it seems like that's a major issue that they're telling me they want everybody to vote on it because that's a discussion that should be a universal discussion. And I don't know if from the research y'all have done, if this is the right panel to even bring that up, because it seems like that was a real fear of parents that live within the proposed district.
So obviously, we don't have a school district yet, but they have said specifically that is their motivating goal, and I believe that's the first line on their website is to form a new school district after St. George is formed. I can give you some statistics. I can tell you that 3,382 public school students as of last calendar year are either living in St. George and going to school in Baton Rouge or living in Baton Rouge and going to school in St. George. So if a new school district were formed, that's 3,382 families who would be deeply affected by that new school district. And if a new school district would be formed, that would be the first time that those families would ever even get to vote on the issue.
Okay, thank you, because that was brought up to me by people that live within the proposed district. Thank
Absolutely.
You. Thank you for answering that question.
Okay. Is there anyone else that wanted to speak on it? Okay. Ms. Nelson?
Good morning, Senators.
Good morning.
I want to start by saying my name is Susan East Nelson, and I want to make it very clear that I'm here on behalf of myself today and not any client that I lobby for or any client that I represent as an attorney. I live in the proposed city of St. George. Okay? And let me back up and give you guys a little bit of history. In the mid-'70s, when my father retired from the U.S. Army, he could have gone anywhere in the world. My parents had lived in Italy. My parents had lived in San Antonio. My parents had lived in Northern Virginia. But he chose to come back to Louisiana and settle in the city of Baton Rouge. So my family has been here since the mid-'70s. I grew up in Baton Rouge, in the city of Baton Rouge. I attended school at LSU. I attended law school at Southern University. I went to high school in Scotlandville. I am part of the rich history of Baton Rouge. I do not want to see the city that built me get torn apart without a vote of the people who still live in the city having a say in it. My mom still lives in the house that I grew up in Kenilworth. And if her life is going to be impacted by this decision financially, if the roads in her neighborhood are not going to get repaired on time because the city can't afford to, then that's going to negatively impact her life. And I don't think that's fair. I want to be very clear that I have no intentions of living in the city of St. George, regardless of the outcome of this ballot. So the other side of the coin is when I am forced to sell my dream home that I built 10 years ago and move into the city, I will be faced with problems that the city will be encountered because the new place that I have to move to is going to be suffering a financial deficit. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair for anyone in the city to be suffering a financial deficit because a group of people have decided, antithetical to Republican concepts, that we need more government in the parish of East Baton Rouge. So I just want to say that the city will be injured, and I don't want to see it injured by selfish interests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nelson. So, if anyone else want to speak? Okay, we're good then. In support of the bill are the people that spoke earlier, and I read their names. Also in support is Senator Regina Barrow, Michael Baychak, Dorothy Thomas, Lois Gant, Martha Davis, Donald Victorian, Emily Taylor, Janet Mulder, David Lindenfield, Ethel Young, Martha Rose Eads, Edward Alums, Carolyn Alums, Mary Garay, Judith Cormier, Diane Hanley, Jennifer Arwell, Kathy Wascom, John Hanley, MJ Mercantile, Donna Mayu, Trina Rora, Scott Kirkpatrick, Adam Kimball, Shane Spillman, and Chad Major, and both of those gentlemen are with the Baton Rouge firefighters. So we're ready for the opposition. So who's going to come up and... So while they're getting seated, in opposition is Montez LeGrand, Clay LeGrand Jr., Luther Simon, Trey Cook, Glenda Berman, Jim Talbert, Chris Riles, Sherry Morris. Those are in opposition that do not want to speak. And we have Norman Browning that does want to speak, Councilman Dwight Hudson that wants to speak, Rick Edmonds, Representative Rick Edmonds, and I'm going to say the name is Amber. I may be wrong. Last name is Morrell or
Andrew Merle.
And okay, thank you. I used to be able to read anything when I was a legal secretary, but I was having a problem with it.
Better too.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Norman Browning, and I am the chairman of the committee to create the City of St. George. The City of St. George is a petition effort to incorporate an unincorporated area in East Baton Rouge Parish. I'm going to start with the definition from Webster of it. To incorporate means to unite or work into something already existent so as to form an indistinguishable whole. This is what we're doing. We're not separating. In fact, we're doing the complete opposite. We'll be a part of East Baton Rouge Parish, the same way Central, Baker, and Zachary are. It's taken 5 years to get to the ballot. During the 5 years, we ran 2 petitions and collected close to 40,000 signatures and made a tremendous amount of sacrifices to exercise our fundamental right to petition our government for a fair vote. The reason I say fair is because never in our state's history has an area had the entire parish vote on an incorporation. Never mind the fact that this is an attempt by the powers to be to change the rules at the end of the game. It's unequivocally wrong and anti-American. The bill is simply an attempt to kill the City of St. George without a fair vote. After the first petition effort, and prior to the start of the second one, there was already a total rewrite of the Lawson Act, a bill submitted by Representative Smith. The major change that law did was put a time limit on the length of a petition effort and had to gather the signatures. Instead of having an unlimited amount of time to collect the signatures, we now had 270 days to accomplish that goal. We prepared for this change and executed our plan to meet the deadline in an attempt to change the law after we have accomplished this feat and has finally had our election called is wrong. You know, quite simply, Baton Rouge has had ample opportunities to annex the unincorporated area that we're talking about. In fact, they did multiple annexations. However, those annexations were the mall, the casino, hospitals, and such. Not any of those annexations were residential areas. Baton Rouge does not want us, or they would have annexed us. But at the same time, they don't want us to have a city such as Baton Rouge, Baker, Central, or Zachary. With that, I urge you to please vote on this piece of legislation. Vote no on this piece of legislation.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Will you repeat your name to me, please?
Norman Browning. I am the
Mr.
chairman
Browning?
of the city.
Okay. So, Ms. Browning, I just have a couple of questions for you. You said that Baton Rouge doesn't want you. So, did you guys ever ask to be annexed in?
Actually, I did have a meeting with the mayor, and we had that very discussion, and she said, you know, I've never thought about that. We'll have to look into that.
And at what point in your
prior to the second petition? Sorry.
Okay. Okay. So you did ask for annexation.
Yeah.
And annexation in lieu of moving out, or just annexation?
Yeah. No, for her to annex the entire unincorporated area.
Okay.
Or I should say, not her, the city.
Yeah, it is the city. It's the administration in the city. So you said that, and I'm speaking to this because it's something that I thought you were directing directly at me because it's my bill. So you said I'm trying to change the rules in the middle of the game, and you said it was un-American, and that offended me.
Well,
I was born here. I was born 5 minutes from here. I could see the Capitol from my house. And that's not a joke like Sarah Palin. It's true. I live in the north part of the city. I was born in a house on 29th Street. And so I'm as American as anyone. I love my country. I love my state. That's why I served. I've served my entire life. And so changing the rules in the middle of the game and being un-American is not why I brought this bill. I believe that everybody in this parish that contributed to that part of the parish should have the right to say what happens to the infrastructure and the money and the funds that are out there. Because you see, on this side of I-10 is not developed. And more money went out there than went on this side of Baton Rouge. So as it relates to being un-American, this is just democracy at work. And that's what America is all about. It's democracy at work. And this body, Mr. Browning, deals with complex issues every day we're here. We deal with whether somebody can live or die, whether a baby can have food or not. Those things are really serious. Much more serious than this, although this is very serious and complex. So to move St. George out of the parish affects everyone in the parish. It affects my kids that live in the parish. It affects everyone else's kids. It affects our school system. It affects our streets. And to be perfectly honest, in St. George, proposed St. George, that it's beautiful out there. I go out there, I like it out there. The money moved out there. So now that everything is perfect, we want to take it out of the city and leave the city, the rest of the city and the rest of the parish is in poverty, because what you're doing is going to affect it. So I think that you know your words. I understand the work you put into it. I understand petitions. I understand all of that. But this is also a part of the process. being in government at this Capitol is where decisions are made for all of the state and for portions of the state and for all the people of the state. And I just wanted to say that.
Well, I apologize if you took that personally, because it was not intended directly at you. It was intended to talk about the fact of the voting rights and the people that are in the St. George right, and allowing them to have the control that all the other cities, when they were formed, had, okay, and to stay within the presence of the law. So once again, I apologize.
I accept your apology. And I just want to say that if we're the St. George issue is dividing the city, it's like a divorce. So if you're getting a divorce and your wife contributed, you contributed, and then your wife decides, I don't want to be married anymore, and she just moves out, and she goes and she says, you know what, I don't want to move, I want to come back. I want you to move, and I want everything that we accomplished together. I want the house, I want the car, I want the 501k, I want the kids, I want the dogs, I want the cat, I want everything. Just let me out. That's exactly what you're doing here. You want everything that's been paid for by the citizens of this parish. You want all of that to go to St. George without the people of the parish having to say. Now, the people are smart. Voters are smart. The voters know that if you don't give them an opportunity to vote on this, they may vote for it. You know, who knows what will happen? We never know what happens in an election. But, you know, it's what you're doing is taking everything that's been invested by the whole parish, and you want only people out there to vote for it. I think that's unfair.
Senator Colomb, if I may interject, and thank you, committee, for allowing us to speak
Sure.
today. Misconception, this is not a breakaway, this is not a separation, and this is not a divorce. You cannot divorce if you've never been married. We do not recognize common law marriage in Louisiana. We are always going to be in the parish of East Baton Rouge, regardless if St. George is successful or not. The unincorporated area is always going to be in East Baton Rouge Parish. So the idea that funds are being... Andrew Merle, spokesperson and part of the legal team for the City of St. George, proposed City of St. George. So the concept that money is being taken out of this parish is incorrect. Money is going to remain in this parish indefinitely. Our goal at the City of St. George is to make this parish better by making a stronger area of East Baton Rouge Parish. So you can't get divorced if you've never been married. It's unincorporated. You know, the first...
You are married, though.
Being a lawyer...
you are married.
First time
you're
I found
to the
out...
Parish.
I am married. Exactly right.
You're married to the parish.
I am married to East Baton Rouge Parish, but not the City of Baton Rouge.
Well,
I've never lived in the City of Baton Rouge.
That's where all your support comes from.
But I don't get to vote for the CATS bus transit tax, which is a Baton Rouge City tax. I did not get to vote for the central mayor. I did not get to vote for the Baton Rouge constable. Should those also be parish-wide because they also affect me, if that's the same argument?
The City of Baton Rouge constable? No, you have a sheriff, obviously. You do get to vote for the sheriff.
Going down to the courthouse for the Baton Rouge City Court, that affects me.
I'm sorry?
That going down to Baton Rouge City Court, that affects me.
If you have some business if you
and in St. George, I also pay part of the pensions for all East Baton Rouge Parish employees, so that affects me.
Mm-hmm. And you get to vote on things that happen in the parish.
Not in the City of Baton Rouge, though. And another misconception that was stated earlier, with this is going to affect parish-wide taxes. That is incorrect. City of St. George is going to pay its pro rata share of all parish-wide taxes. It was voted on by the parish and approved by the parish, so St. George is going to participate. It's a misconception that all this money is being taken away from EBR Parish. It's not being taken away. It remains right in EBR Parish. In fact, for the parish-wide services, it remains exactly as it has been. We're talking about Baton Rouge City versus the City of St. George. And that's a fundamental difference. The money is not leaving the parish. This is not a breakaway. This is not a secession. This is as simple as an unincorporated area of a parish incorporating. And what's happening now is you're allowing proposed bill would allow other people to say we're not allowed to incorporate. We're not allowed to form a city. You won't annex us, but we're not going to let you form a city either. The first time in state history that an incorporation effort would allow a vote from anyone other than the people in the proposed area. It'll be the first time in state history. And the law, as it is already, provides a mechanism in the legal system for people adversely affected to file a lawsuit. Ms. Pearson's already got it on her desk. She's ready to go. So let's let her do that, because that's the process that's in place right now.
Well, I disagree with you, because the process is always in place in the legislature. The legislature can address any issue. So, yes, that's a process that may be in place, but we also have the right to hear this and to decide on it.
Yes, Senator, that is correct, which is why I'm here in opposition, hoping that
Absolutely.
hoping there's a no vote.
No, thank you. Good. Hi, Sherry.
Hello. Sherry Morris, attorney for the chairman of the incorporation effort. And I just want to clarify some of the things that have been said today, because I think there's a lot of misinformation about incorporation and about the form of government we actually have in East Baton Rouge Parish. While it is a consolidated government, it's not completely consolidated like Orleans Parish is. We have multiple municipalities, and the only consolidation is between the city of Baton Rouge and the parish of East Baton Rouge. The other municipalities are autonomous with respect to municipal functions, but we all are in the same parish, and there are parish functions which are shared among those. I was also the counsel for the chairman of the effort to incorporate the city of Central, and I currently serve as the Central city attorney. So I'm familiar with all the different pools of money that support services. There would be no impact on the bonds, because those taxes would stay separately, and this is all really relative to the bill that's coming later. But there wouldn't be any impairment of the bonds. There wasn't when Central separated. And in fact, it was said earlier that there was no opposition to the Central separation. That totally is not correct. There were, I think, almost 5 lawsuits challenging it. The mayor was Mayor Kip Holden, and there was information about the negative financial impact that would result from the incorporation of Central. But in fact, none of that has happened. Central has a lot of economic development. It has a lot of amenities there for the people that live there that were not there before, and they contribute to the parish tax base, not only for the parish, but for the school systems and the sheriff's office and the other properties that are within our parish. Because their property values have much increased, their population has grown, and those are all things that the city of St. George has looked at. There's been also comments about duplication of services, and doesn't that cost more? It could, if it depends upon how you operate the city. But this city is, the city of St. George intends to use a model that's been used in other cities where the revenues are self-supportive, as Central did. Central has no debt. Central has a fund balance, and Central charges for the services. They don't subsidize it with sales tax. They're one of the, it may be the only, but if not the only, one of the few municipalities that has no property tax. And so St. George is moving toward that model, and it can be done without duplication of efforts. There was comments about the sewer, the bonds for the sewer tax. The sewer district is a consolidated district, and St. George will remain in that district. It is separate from the city of Baton Rouge. It's separate from the parish. The transportation tax that was just passed is a separate district that will remain. Also, the prior road tax that was put in place in 2005 would stay separate. So a lot of what's been said this morning is just misinformation. The reason that the vote is local on a municipality, different from the way it is in a school system, is because it will have to be supported locally. Not only do the dollars transfer, not only would the ability to increase taxes transfer to the new municipality, but also the liability to provide the services. So it's inaccurate to say that $43 million just leaves the parish government. Also, the responsibilities to provide the services that are attached to those dollars transfer. The comments about the school system, this bill and none of the bills in committee today create a school system. A school system has to be created by a constitutional amendment, and that would be considered by this body as well. So I'm available to answer any questions. I know Senator Martini had a lot of questions that I could provide information on as well, but he's not here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sherry. I just want to tell you guys that I have a bill in another committee. So when somebody's whispering in my ear, we have a lot of things going on. I'm missing a bill in another committee, and that's why. And then my colleagues are asking me questions on the side, so we're not ignoring anybody when I have a sidebar. Anybody have any questions? Anyone else want to speak from the St. George proponents?
All right. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask you something, Sherry, and I may be wrong on this, but when Ms. Pearson was at the table, and she may need to come up to answer this, I wrote some notes down, and one of the things I heard her say, and I am not an attorney. I call myself a bootleg one, but I'm really not. So she said something to the effect that the parishes, other parishes didn't vote. The whole parish didn't vote because they weren't consolidated. Did I hear that incorrectly, Ms. Pearson? Or okay, can Ms. Pearson, can you come to the table and kind of y'all clarify that for us?
While we're called, East Baton Rouge is referred to as a consolidated city parish. It's not actually consolidated in the manner that Orleans and some other parishes are, because we do have municipalities. The parish is only consolidated.
Ms. Pearson, you can take that seat right there in the middle.
The parish is only consolidated with the city of Baton Rouge, so those of us who reside in the unincorporated area do not receive city services. We cannot use the city court, and a lot of things that are funded, the things that are city services are not available to those of us who live in the unincorporated portion of the parish. And if we were truly a consolidated government like Orleans, where the city limits and the parish limits are coterminous, we would have access to all the services that are provided by the city. But in East Baton Rouge, while we use the term consolidated, it is only consolidated with the city limits of Baton Rouge, which is a very small portion. It's one ward, as Ms. Pearson said, primarily.
Oh, okay. Can you speak to that, Ms. Pearson?
Yes. First of all, don't take my picture between these two and publish it on Facebook or something. God.
Fair. I don't know if I should be insulted or take that as a compliment.
I mean, I might have to go buy some Kevlar, but if that's shown on Facebook, look who she joined up with. But anyway, yes, let me speak to the consolidated. Yeah. We're getting into.
We do have a sense of humor here.
Yeah, I've been known to have one from time to time. But let me speak to the word consolidated. We decided to consolidate in 1949, and since then, Central has been formed, Baker has been formed. As I said, Zachary was here before 1900, I think. And we are consolidated in fact. Whether the consolidation says, okay, it doesn't say it's only Ward 1. We're consolidated city and parish. And whenever you see the mayor's name, it's Mayor Sharon Weston Broome, mayor of the city parish of East Baton Rouge. So that means the city and the parish are consolidated in fact, de facto. They don't have to have coterminous boundaries to be consolidated. We have been consolidated since 1949. We have been collecting taxes and distributing them on a basis approved by our council, which has 12 districts. We got 12 council members, and they're in separate districts. We don't have any at-large. I guess you could say that makes us unconsolidated because we don't have an at-large council member. But we have 12 districts, and they meet, disagree a lot, but they meet and they pass the budget every year. And the money, we have one budget for the whole parish. And that money, some of that goes to Central, some goes into Zachary, Some goes out by St. George because they're not incorporated yet, but it goes out in that area. So to say, by some Webster definition, if we're not the same as New Orleans and have coterminous boundaries, that we're not consolidated, hey, Webster, I think he's dead. So maybe he needs to have a new dictionary. But you have de facto and legally. We are legally consolidated and we are de facto consolidated because we've been consolidated. We have one finance department. The finance department, we have some people here from the finance department, they'll tell you, they prepare the budget for the entire parish, including Central, Zachary, Baker. They get money from us because they're in the parish. And by the way, I need to make a distinction for you. The word parish-wide taxes has been thrown around, and it's a misnomer. Some of the taxes, although they're collected in the entire parish, they were voted on because they're in a district, like a sewer district. So that's different from a parish-wide tax. So that might be a distinction without a difference, but we like to be precise. When you're dealing with taxes and you put it on a ballot, you better be precise because it might be something wrong with what the voters voted on. But I hope that answers the question.
It did. I think everybody understood that. So, oh, I'm sorry. Senator Martini has a question. Sorry.
I apologize. I was in the anteroom, but I was listening to them. And then I got a call from home, and I was told you better get back in the meeting because some lady said she's got the answer to your question. So, if for no other reason I'm doing this, so they'll know that I'm at the committee meeting. But what questions did I ask? And I assume it was you, Sherry, that had the answer.
Well, you were asking about the legal challenge, and I think there was information that was given out about the central incorporation. The central incorporation, there was no challenge to the statute. There was a challenge to a home rule charter provision, and so the Attorney General was not required to be notified of that. It was the central incorporation also wasn't that everybody in the parish said just let them go. There was similar dialogue between the city and the city of Central and the parish, but the legal challenge, and there is a legal challenge provision after the vote as well in the Larson Act, which allows impacted entities or individuals to challenge the incorporation, and really that's the proper forum.
But that's after the fact?
That is correct.
This is some of the concerns that I've heard up here is I'm assuming that if we pass this bill, the people from the city of St. George, if that's what they call it, would take legal action to say that it's violative of the law, of the I mean, not the law, but it would have to be unconstitutional. And I believe, and I surely don't want to put words in Ms. Pearson's mouth, but I thought I think she told me she had the lawsuit already prepared, challenging the constitutionality of not letting the whole parish. So what is the probability that you're going to end up in court on this on either side? I mean, I'm not asking you to commit to me that you're going to do it, but I mean, as I appreciate it, Ms. Pearson has already said she thinks it's unconstitutional. Okay, obviously you're here. I don't think you think it's unconstitutional, the current law. So why are we doing this when it's going to end up in court anyway?
Couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
I can disagree, but here I am. I'm sitting. I'm not supposed
No,
to
I agree. No, but what I'm trying to say is there's a whole bunch of, and again, we always get in these Baton Rouge fights over, and wait, I don't live in New Orleans.
Senator Martini.
You've never, what? I live next door, but I don't get to vote there. I ought to have a voice in what goes on in New Orleans.
Don't y'all believe that New Orleans and Jefferson, they fight like cats and dogs, and
they do.
Everybody can attest to that.
They do, but we don't.
We
don't drag it up here for you to referee. So.
Yes, y'all do.
All right, that's enough.
Yes, y'all do. Okay, Senator Martini, thank you for that. I have a card from Mr. Lionel Rainey in opposition. And I have the staff looking at something. Could you hold on just a minute?
definitely don't want to sit by Ryan Hill. Picture taken. Go on Facebook.
Are we done?
I think so. I think she's just reading cards. And she can
Okay, I have a card in support, in opposition to the bill from Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis is a legislative assistant to Representative Rick Edmonds. Is Mr. Davis here? So, I'm sorry?
You want me to read a statement for him? There's a bill on the floor right now. I'll just be reading his statement.
Okay, you're going to read his statement? I think you can read his statement, but we were just looking at the rules because I didn't think a legislative assistant could testify against something. Okay, so you can read his statement. We'll take his statement. Okay, Mr. Davis, you can
Okay, yeah, so again,
go
this
ahead
is
and read
from,
your statement.
Representative
Mr.
Edmonds.
Davis is a legislative assistant to Representative Rick Edmonds, who is opposed to this bill.
Okay. So thank you for allowing me to speak with you today regarding HB 63.
I'm sorry, Mr. Davis. When you're done, we'll need you to submit that blue card. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you for allowing me to speak with you today regarding SB 63. First, I want to explain why I'm testifying in front of your committee today. There is a process underway to create a city that will contain a portion of the unincorporated area of East Baton Rouge Parish. This proposed city, the city of St. George, overlaps with my district. All in all, I represent approximately 80% of this proposed city, so I've seen the process up close. The process for the city incorporation began on March 2nd, 2018, when a petition was filed with the Secretary of State by Norman Browning, the chairman of the petition drive, and Chris Riles, vice chairman of the petition drive. These two people were registered voters and reside in the proposed city limits. The petition was endorsed by the Secretary of State on the same day. Thereafter, the petition began circulating throughout the public sphere in a proposed city's area. The goal for the petition drive was set at 12,966 verified signatures. On October 15th, 2018, the petition was delivered with, according to the Registrar of Voters, 17,102 signatures. The petition was delivered before the deadline. And on February 25th of that year, the East Baton Rouge Parish Registrar of Voters certified the petition, stating that 14,585 signatures were verified, exceeding the required amount by 12%. Let me repeat that. 14,585 registered voters in that area. That's 28% of the registered voters in the proposed city's areas signed their name, printed their name, provided their personal information such as date of birth in order to get their chance to vote on this issue. And on March 29th, the governor set an election date for the proposed city incorporation on October 12th, 2019. The people who legitimately signed the petition, all 14,585 of them, followed the process set in front of them by law. They voiced their opinion, not on the incorporation of the city, but on the democratic process. They wanted a chance to vote. The bill before you today undermines the people in this community, many of whom are my constituents. It changes the rule of the game that while a game is still being played. It is completely unfair to pull the rug from underneath them as they await their day at the polls. Ultimately, the democratic process should never be manipulated in order to change the rules of an issue. Never. Thus, I ask that you voluntarily defer this bill. That will ensure that the democratic process is untainted as the petition drive that was currently underway.
Thank you very much. Senator Donahue in the chair. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
You're welcome, Senator.
I am thankful for all of the people that were here in opposition and for the people that are here in support. I just want to say I brought this bill because the people have a right to petition their government. The people that I represent and others, even people from the St. George proposed area, have contacted my office in record numbers. There are people that contacted my office that couldn't be here, that sent letters, that emailed, they called, and we kept a list of them, and we kept their emails that live in the St. George area that are not for this bill. I did not bring the bill for any nefarious reason or to hurt anybody. Hopefully, I was bringing it so that people, when the people have the opportunity to vote on this bill in the entire parish, we have two different opinions on consolidated. But what I do know from a simplistic standpoint is that all the people in this parish help to make that part of the parish better. And I wanted all of the people of the parish to have the opportunity to vote for this bill because I believe all of the people of the parish contributed to that area. And I think we've had a fair hearing, both sides, and I'm not going to belabor it. I'll answer any questions if my colleagues have them. And if not, I'll move favorable as amended on this bill.
All right, Senator Colomb, there are no questions from the committee. Senator Colomb moves that we report the bill favorable. Senator Martini objects. Secretary, call the roll, please.
It's favorable as
All right, we have a substitute motion by Senator Martini to defer.
Senator Martini.
Let's second.
Okay. Senator Martini? Yes. Senator Hensges?
Yes.
Senator Donahue? Senator Colomb?
No.
Senator Mills? Senator Smith?
Yes.
Senator Peterson?
No.
We have 3 nays and 4 yeas.
That bill has been deferred. Thank you, members.